Okay, we are live, friend.
Wow,
How you doing today?
I'm very good.
Yeah. Yes, you are. All
Yeah.
right. Okay, so it's 7:30, probably in 30 seconds, whatever. I'll allow some people to fill up the room just for a little bit, but I'm going to get started at least with introducing my guest here. So if you don't know me, I don't know why you don't because you're on my Facebook page. But if you found me from somewhere, oh, I hear those New York sirens back there.
Yeah.
I'm Crystal, the inclusion lady. I focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion as a lens to live my life and to support organizations and people with the same best practices. So I have today a guest here by the name of Malika Sunflower. I love her very dearly. I've known her for years. We were introduced to each other in the leadership life coaching realm. I was her coach once upon a time, and then she also became a partner in the coaching realm with me, and also just deeply like she's a sister of mine, loving me with all my flaws unconditionally, and she'll be forever that to me. So there's that. I am coming to all of us at Facebook with the topic of consent. um, Malika Sunflower is not just expert on other things because like she has so much under her belt, but consent is her wheelhouse. This is something that she just speaks so fluid about, and I thought that it would be like a great topic to talk about, spinning off the last live that I did on the Diddy situation and the Diddy of it all. And there are some comments, that talks about like, oh, well, this person knew they shouldn't have been there, yada yada yada. Also, it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so that's another reason why I wanted to talk about this. And then lastly, I just saw, well, my sister, a real sister of mine, blood sister, she went through a sexual assault situation where she met some guy on a dating app and they went on a date. And after the date, he sexually assaulted her and she was fully clothed. So, there was no that, oh, well, she shouldn't have been dressed that way. It didn't even like matter in this situation. So I felt compelled because I was heated and I wanted to drive to Maryland to wherever this person was, but whatever's clever. So with all that being said, I want to introduce my dear love and expert on consent, Malika Sunflower. Hey.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm cool. I'm cool. It's
Well,
cool.
I want to say real quick, just trigger warning about the SA and holding space for anybody who's been through that. I know a lot of people have in some level, so holding space that this topic could be very heavy for people or bring up things for people. So just take care of yourself. If you got to not watch it, it's okay.
That is so important, and I'm glad you said that. I am going to make a note of that so that other people can be aware of that. Also, for you all in the audience, we will be pulling up your comments, and you know that you're free to share your experiences or any questions or concerns. Or if you disagree with what we're saying, feel free to also give your comments, and we will address them as well. So, thank you for that. All right, so let's kind of get started, right? Because with the DEI work that I do, I have been introduced to consent, and through HR, they kind of
Mhm.
ask the employees to go through this training so we can understand what consent is. And we have like the sexual harassment workshops that were something that was legal to, we had to either consent to or not in terms of like signing these papers with HR or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and so my understanding of consent has always been, other than like seeing things that we fill out and we either opt in or opt out, but it's been like around physical touch and letting people know not to touch you, or, even if it's just like a ha 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 and you touch my shoulder,
Right.
even going in for hugs. and not asking someone that is if it's okay. But that's I feel like that's only one lens of consent. So like does consent is it does it go beyond the physical touch?
Yes. Well, first of all, yes, it does go beyond the physical touch. Consent is a whole umbrella, a framework where we are um, like defined to keep us safe, to keep community safe, to keep ourselves safe. And that involves, it could involve information like going through someone's phone is, violating someone's consent or violating someone's privacy.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say to what you said about like consent and like how we often hear it. We hear it when it's coming to like sex, um, and like heavy touch. But I will say that people, I think, okay, it's about touch and it's about non touch. But I want to say that a lot of times we're in automatic. So, like, when people are like, oh, I'm a hugger, like, did you ask first? Did you, take a moment and, check in with someone and say, hey, I like to hug people. Or is it okay if I hug you? And
Mm.
wait for the answer, right? Because sometimes in automatic, before we even give the person a moment to answer, we're already coming towards them. And the first time I did a
Mm.
consent workshop as a student, I thought about how many times I often, without thinking, violated someone's consent, and I'm not talking about, the major things, but I'm talking about something as subtle as speaking with your hands and touching someone's shoulder without asking and things like that.
Mm.
Um, so I think it's something that goes from the variation of the subtle things and also the really intense things. And I think consent is something that we all need a refresher on.
So what would you say the direct definition of consent is?
Okay, let me see. Um, I can give you a list of things that consent isn't.
Okay.
Consent is a framework that allows us all to feel safe, where all parties are in agreement.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And I can tell you, like, for instance, the Planned Parenthood model for consent. Consent is, they'll use fries. So fries is just a wording in which you will go down the list. So the F stands for freely. Consent is given freely. So you know that you are in consent if it is done without coercion and it's given to you freely, right? You didn't have to manipulate them or you didn't have to coerce them, and the person didn't feel pressured. Um, then the R would stand for it's reversible. So at any moment, even if you said yes, you can say no. You can say, I actually changed my mind, right? So, sometimes they'll be like, oh, well, she shouldn't have went up there. No, it does not matter. At any moment, I don't care, mid-act, you should be able to revoke your consent, okay?
Okay.
So that's R. The I is informed. Informed means that you were given all the information that you needed to make this choice on whether you're saying yes or no, right? So this person didn't now release all this other information, and then then it would be like, hey, I feels like my consent was violated. Like they only asked me they asked me a question, they didn't give me really important, pertinent information, and I said yes, but then after I said yes, I found out all this other stuff. So that
Mm.
would be like, it feels like my consent was violated. I
Mm.
didn't fully agree to that. Then
Okay.
the E stands for enthusiastic, but it can also mean engaged. So that means that the person said yes, and you're very clear that it was a full on yes. There's no maybe about it. It's like, yes, I definitely want to do this. Or if it doesn't feel enthusiastic, you know that the person is engaged. They are alert. They have their full faculties. They're not drunk. They're not, it's a definite yes, right? Like you've checked in and it's an engaged yes. And then the S stands for specific. So I asked you to give me a hug. I say yes. Now, why is your hand on my butt? I didn't agree to that part. I agreed to a hug.
Mhm.
So, or, hey, can we hold hands? And then all of a sudden you're like tickling my hand. I didn't agree to that. I need you to be specific. Um, so those are things that, I really always go back to the Fry's model, but there's other models like that is used in consent. But that's my foundation of when I talk about consent a lot of times, as like
Okay.
for people to understand the definition of it. And it's always ongoing as well. So
Okay.
if
So
I said yes today, doesn't mean I said yes tomorrow. If I said yes last week, it has to be clear that I'm saying yes for this whole season. Doesn't mean that I'm saying yes. It's an ongoing agreement. And that's,
so are you so do all of these things need to be present
hmm
for it to
yes,
be consent?
yes, totally.
Okay.
and
Okay.
and how you don't, if you are not sure, then you can always ask. You could check in. People think asking like, hey, are you still okay with this? Hey, are you all right? People think that messes up the mood, but it actually doesn't. It makes people feel safer. And when people feel safe, they feel like, oh, now I really want to do things, or potentially, but I always say you can never check in enough, right? You can
Yeah,
never check
'cause
in with yourself enough. You can never check in with the person that you're asking something of.
I'm imagining when you said, all right, so I'm putting myself in a
I
situation.
gave you a lot of information. I know.
Yeah, and I have questions about it.
Yes,
So,
yes.
especially when I'm engaged in like sexual, intimate settings and I'm with someone and you're saying, and then by your model, it's like, all right, this man, he asks if he can kiss me, right?
Hmm.
And then he kisses me. And then if he wants to like put his hand on my shoulder, he's going to say, "Can I put my hand on your shoulder?" And then, "Can I touch your elbow?" Now, "Can I touch your tatas?" Now, "Can I touch this is how it sounds to me, like every
Okay, no, no,
single
no.
touch down the body, you're
No, no, no.
asking me.
Usually, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Um, I will say that it sounded like that. So I'll say this: you can never check in enough. But let's say we're engaging in something like, "Hey, I would like to have sex with someone." The first thing I would do is say, "Can we have a conversation about what our boundaries are, what our no's are?" So that's what I'll say. Like, let's have a conversation before we act tonight on what my no's are. So this is what I'm okay with. This is what I'm not okay with. So I'm okay with, if things go further tonight, I'm okay with hugs and kisses and touches, but I don't want you to touch over here or something like that. This is a
Okay.
conversation that gets to be had
So,
before you engage. And
okay.
then in that conversation, you can ask a bunch of clarifying questions like, this is the great time to have a conversation about STIs. This is a great conversation, you know,
So
that
are we having this conversation over dinner? Like, is this?
time.
I'm just,
You can have this. So I would have that conversation at any moment
okay.
before I, like, I don't like to lead anyone on. So, if we're having, it depends on, everything is case by case.
Yeah.
Right. But I will say, before I engage in heavy touching, I've had a conversation about what my boundaries are and what their boundaries are. I'm in a curious space of, what are your boundaries? What are areas? How do you like to be touched? This is a wonderful, playful, curious space that we get to be in when we're learning about how to get. If we're talking about the umbrella of sex, right?
Yeah.
How you know how do you like to be touched? What type of touch do you like? What are your no's? Hey, if we do engage in something tonight, where do you want to go with that? Where do you want, and just because they said something now, it's still also a constant check-in. So at any moment, someone could have said, hey, I agree to all these things, and I definitely want to do it. And then in the middle, they say, I actually don't. or they're making, or they don't even verbally say it. There's all these nonverbal no's. Then you get to stop at any moment, because even if you're unsure, then you stop and ask questions, right?
Okay, so I'm hearing that people need to understand what their own boundaries are, because a lot of people don't. That's a process by itself. And then we also need to have the courage to speak up for our boundaries and speak up for ourselves. And then I also hear the asking of it. So, and then I hear that we also need to learn what nonverbal communication is, or is that something we should already know?
Well, here's the thing. If you're unsure, then when I say you can never check in enough,
Okay.
then you get to ask questions, right? And if you're not getting clear answers, then it's a no. A maybe
Okay.
is a no, right? But
Yeah.
I want to say this. We're talking about consent in a didactic way, right? With your partner during sex. Consent is in the individual first, right? So what are my no's? Am I a yes? Am I a no? So that I'm clear about what I'm saying yes to, what I'm saying no to. If I'm a maybe, if I'm not sure, then I'm going to lean towards the no for now. I'm going to
Mhm.
express that I'm a no. And that is practice, right? So I can coach on practice. We practice saying yes, we practice saying no. Also, on the other side, it's hearing a no. So someone has a right to say no to you. That's coping with rejection, right? Um, Someone saying yes to you. Are you sure that's a yes? Did they have the freedom to say no? Was there some power dynamic within that? Did they say yes and it was like, okay, was it some coercion in that? Was it a free
Mhm.
yes? Did they say yes because they thought they would lose their job? These are questions that you get to be in the inquiry about, right? So are you the asker, or are you the person saying yes or no? Are you the respondent?
My
Um,
God, this is so
these
powerful.
are things. These are things that it's really about this. Like sometimes we violate consent and it's non-malicious, right? It's really
Right.
like, oh shit, I didn't know. Oh my God, like I didn't know that she wasn't a toucher, and I just went over there and gave her a hug, and that
Right.
wasn't malicious. But guess what? You created the opposite of what you wanted to create. You wanted to create this safe connection, and you just was in your automatic, and you create, now this woman put, or this person put a wall up, like, right, they didn't want to be touched, or they didn't want that, right? So there's things that are done in non-malicious ways, and really it's just about the more we can get out of our automatic, read more about consent, take some consent courses, and also start to practice our own, like, boundaries, getting clear on what our yeses and our nos are, and how often we say yes to things that we're not really a yes to, how often we say no to things that we're not really a no to.
Yeah. And that was
All
a
these things, then we get in touch with that. Then we go, wait, I don't want to hurt anyone. Let me check in more often.
correct.
Um,
There was this lady, I was at an event, line dancing as usual. And this white lady walked up to me and was like, "Oh my God, you are the cutest little thing." She starts smacking my cheeks and was just like, "Oh my God, you're so adorable. Are you a hairstylist?" And I was just like, "No." And she's like, "Oh my God, you're just so cute." And she walks away.
oh my
I
God.
was left standing there like,
I would have
first of
died.
all, don't you fucking touch my face. Okay.
Yeah.
Second of all, what possessed you to put your hands on me? You don't know me from Adam. Secondly, thirdly, fourthly, I'm like into racial dynamics already as it is, and I don't care for white people petting black people.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And I felt such like I just went into like a baby slave. Like, I mean, that's just where my mind went
Yeah.
to. And
There's the racial shit, there's the
then
men
I
shit.
said to myself, was like, okay, I know that this lady was not malicious in what her intent was. Sometimes they're really conditioned to be this way. And when I say they, I would say Caucasians, or it
Uh-huh.
could be older people who are like, conditioned to be a certain way. But like I really sat there and I just let it go in my spirit so that I wouldn't be pissed the hell off. But I felt violated, and something in me wanted to go back and chase the lady down to kind of let her know that that was not okay. But I didn't do it to keep
Right.
her peace.
Yeah. I mean, listen, reminding yourself, like, hey, I have autonomy over my own body. And, being able to vocalize. Sometimes we go into fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, where
Yeah,
we might freeze in the moment, like, oh my God, I can't believe this person did this.
yeah,
And that's why it's like we have to take care of our trauma, right? Take care of ourselves, and you did everything that you could. And then next time, maybe you'll be in a space where you could say it, like, hey, do not touch me. But think about how often adults do that to kids, right?
yeah.
Or, you're like, oh, I'm going to give this kid a hug, and the kid is like, this is my body. I tell my kid, she's almost 10, and she knows about autonomy of her own body. She doesn't have to touch anyone without and no hugs, no, but those are power dynamics. There's adult child, there's, boss employee, there's all these different power dynamics that sometimes, because it's a power dynamic, it will cause the person who is feeling powerless or in the marginalized group to freeze in the moment. And that's why even men and women, right? So women, we've been socialized to say yes, to be people pleasers. So a lot of times men just think, oh, she said yes, okay. And like, wait, did you ask some clarifying questions? Did you really make sure that she was fully engaged? You know,
I have a
and it
question.
is gendered in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Although women can violate consent as well, and women presenting
right.
folks can violate consent as well. But in our society, as far as power dynamic, you know, there's always a man woman thing where women will be like, oh, I'm supposed to go along with it because I'm his wife, or I'm supposed to go along with it because I already said yes. And that's why it's up to the person who's more in the power dynamic of like that situation to check in a little bit more, you
I
know?
need to talk about that because that was definitely me, and I had to learn. I had to go through a whole self love journey first of all to even
Hmm.
understand who I was and what I deserved, and
Right.
then I could like slowly start to speak up and understand and create values for myself. And then speaking up about it was a whole different thing, right? But I want to put that on the shelf really quick because I do want to talk about the dynamic between children and their parents, since you touched on
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
I had a conversation with one of my friends, and we were going over the R. Kelly situation, right? And she's not the only person that has come up with these types of thoughts towards the situation. I hear it all the time, where okay, they say, well, R. Kelly, if he did this, and yeah, he did do this, but what about the parents? You know, why is it that these
Who
parents?
was R. Kelly not an adult?
So hold on. So, because they were saying like, why aren't the parents in trouble for co-signing on their kids? Because some of the parents were bringing their children over to R. Kelly's house and leaving them there, right? Or co-signing to send your kid by plane to be with a grown ass man, and they were underage. So, can we talk about, which I think that was a good question that you stated there, but like what onus does a parent have in the consent conversation
Hmm.
when they're sending their 16-year-old over to this grown man's house who has a reputation of being a sexual fucking predator?
Hmm. Hmm. So here's the thing. I think that we love to deflect responsibility, and we do that all the time, even with men. It's like, oh well, what was she wearing? She shouldn't have been over at his hotel room at 2 a.m. in the morning. How about the rapist is the fucking issue? The adult is the issue. Let's not deflect the responsibility, period. Like, yes, okay, the parent can think about that, with their therapist, but overall, thank God he's in jail. the person who is the adult who should not have done the violating thing to the person, to the other person. Like people leave their kid with the babysitter. So, oh, you should, yes, of course you're going to say, damn, I should have done more research. Or, you leave your kid at school. Yes, I should have done more research on every single teacher in the school. But it's if the teacher violated the kid, it's that person. That's the individual that did the wrong thing. That is the person that should be held to a whole lot of responsibility for what they did.
I agree. And I had gotten to it with a
Like
guy.
not deflecting it, not taking
Yeah.
a little bit off of it, like give them all the rage because they are the adults that violated the consent.
So I had a conversation with a guy I was dating at the time, and we got on this subject too, and I kicked him out my damn house. So he was like, look, they were 16 years old. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, that's a rape apologist, and be careful. All the people who are defending Puffy, who's, it's an apologist, and I'm just like, it does not matter. It's almost like, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, wrong is wrong, right? So, like, all the reasons around making it wrong, it's like, okay, but wrong is wrong, right? Like, Tahani's co-test just said something about, like, he's against the death penalty, right? I don't give a shit if he killed 20 kids. I'm against the death penalty, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about it. Like, it doesn't matter all the reasons around it. The person who did the wrong thing, like, why are we always like, oh my God, there's crazy people in the world. There's people, like, yes, I get it. Yes, you should use all your brain knowledge to keep yourself safe. But also, can we not take any weight off of the pedos and all of the, yeah.
And that's what I stand with it. It's like, all right, we can go all around the mulberry bush, except for like, let's go into where the bush is and let's hold them up accountable to that. And then I also say this, we need to, am I the same person at 16 that I am at 44 years old? Hell no. I didn't have the wherewithal or the experience to even understand what the hell I was doing, to be honest. So it's like, I'm going to compare my 16-year-old mind to my 30-year-old mind to my 20-year-old mind. And from my understanding, there are also states that say you cannot consent as a child. Like you don't even have the ability.
I mean, listen, of course you can, have your feelings and opinions toward the parents. I'm not defending the parents or anything like that. Yeah. What I'm saying is that have all those feelings and all the rage for the person who actually did the act. That's what I'm saying.
Keep
like period.
Same energy on the person that absolutely did it. Like there's a comment here that says, it was public knowledge that he was a pedo. Yeah, and he's a pedo.
And thank God he's in jail.
Let's not deflect from that. Another comment here. Laws need to be changed to protect women better than they are now. I agree. And we've come a long way. We've come a long way too. So I agree with that too.
I think more education needs to be around consent. Like from like the beginning, like from elementary school. It's like we just stop at like don't touch anyone without asking. We don't talk about power dynamics. We don't talk about how somebody could change their mind and say, hey, I don't want you to touch me anymore. That means you got to stop touching them. We don't talk about all the ways in which you could violate someone's consent or all the ways in which someone can feel pressured to say yes. We don't give people empowerment around, like, I can say no,
Right.
Yeah.
There's so much to say that. I didn't even know how to say that. So like my experience coming up with an intimate relationship, I didn't know how to interact with men. I grew up in a single home. There was no men in the house. Like mom was dating, but she won't bring them to the crib. So like I had to learn from the media really. And I thought that, okay, well, this is how I should interact with men. I'm being submissive. Now, even though I want to say no, and this doesn't feel good, I'm still taking it. because like I'm thinking I'm supposed to. I mean,
Yeah.
it really took me reading self-help books to be like, yo, this is not okay.
Right.
I learned willingness by reading something that Iyanla wrote. I was
Mhm.
like, oh well, shit, willingness. And that's when I just started to have an empowerment conversation with myself to say, you know what, my yes is my yes and my
Mhm.
no is my no.
Yes. And
um
that goes across the board. So I do say that women are socialized to say yes to things that they are not wanting to say yes to. However, also gender is across the board. So, there will be times where you're like with your partner and you're like, what do you mean you're not going to give me any sex? And the woman wants to, fondle the guy or whatever. And the guy said, I don't want to do this right now. So there are many times that, and then
mm,
it's like, oh, he's not supposed to say, yeah, what are you, queer or whatever. Like, there's a lot of toxicity across the board, around consent, around hearing a no. Like when I say people have a right to say no to me, because I have a right to say no, right? And then when someone says no, I always say, thank you for taking care of yourself.
mm,
So, and I got that from, I've taken a lot of consent classes, and then I also took a consent and embodiment facilitator class.
yeah,
Um,
my
so
God.
yeah, these are things that I've learned, and I'm really just, this is my wheelhouse because it's something that I've been on the other side and vice versa, like so many times saying yes to things that I don't want to say yes to, and all these things.
Yeah,
So as I learn more about the topic of consent, I get to feel more empowered. I get the language in the moment, to stand up for myself or to stand up for someone in my community, right?
that
Like,
part.
how often do we see things happening and we're like, hey, let me go over and check on this person. Are you okay? Do you really want to do this? I mean, yes, I know New Yorkers were like, we mind our damn business. I get it. We mind our
Blinders.
business. But, checking in on like something or being in community, like holding people account would be the first community thing,
You better talk about it.
like
I want
holding
to
people to
highlight
account.
this comment that's in right now
Right.
because it's definitely a deep one. And I think it's connected to laws protecting women a bit more. So I'm going to read this out loud. So November 17th, 1986, my mother was shot by her boyfriend twice in her head and 4 times in her chest. The judge gave him 14 suspended, 8. He only served 4 years. 4 years for killing my mother, and nothing has changed since then. It's 2024. I'm so sorry.
That's so
And
sad.
so that goes definitely to your point of needing the laws to change a bit more to
That's
protect
so
us.
sad.
And I'm so sorry about that. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry to hear that. My
and
love.
and this goes into the place of domestic violence. If someone doesn't respect your no, like even just a little ass no, like
Yeah,
actually, I don't like people slapping my ass
yeah,
during sex or whatever, or like, please don't give me a hug today. If they don't respect your no, then there's going to be so many other things that they don't respect, and that's your
ooh,
boundaries, right? So like really knowing how just learning about consent, expressing consent, and noticing what people do when you place your boundaries is can save your life.
that's
Because
so
as
true.
people violate your consent, they keep fucking violating you. And it just gets bigger and bigger, like a little pebble. It was a pebble at first, and then
Right.
it was a brick. And that's the same thing with abuse.
Yeah, you're
Oh, you
right.
called me a name. That first thing, to me, the first sign of abuse is you called me a name.
Right.
Like, oh, you got to go. Blocked.
No, for
Because
real.
that's the ripple effect of like you don't respect me as a human, and that next thing you know, that could lead to domestic violence. So these are things that we learn as we get older, and I wish that if some of us had to learn or we learn the hard way. But
Yeah.
also, fuck that. It's like we get to learn it, but then the people who are fucked up need to stop being, abusers. You know.
That part, but then they're also where abusers are learning the behavior too. So it's like a chicken or the egg situation. I remember back in the day in the 90s where we used to have these bike weeks and these freakniks and all of that, right? And it was so prevalent where a man would just reach out and touch me, just thinking just because I'm here, that you can actually touch me. And I remember being in, once I started to get empowered around like people touching me or whatever, and me not being like open to it. I was in the club one time and I'm walking by or whatever, and this guy, he just grabs my ass, right? So I walk over there and I grab his nuts, right? Just on, and it was like, okay. And he was like so shocked by that. I wouldn't recommend doing that now because that could
It's so
easily
sad.
lead to something
Yeah.
else.
It could be dangerous,
It
right?
could
Like,
be
and
dangerous.
that's a whole nother topic, right? Like, well, it does go into the conversation of rejection, right? So people get to
Mhm.
understand that at any moment someone can say no to you. So I
Right.
would tell your mothers, teach your sons that a woman has a right to say no at any moment. Even if she said yes, she could say no in the middle of it, regardless of what. Like this rage that men feel, and I don't want to say that it's only men, but a lot
Right.
of times we hear every summer I see in the news a woman died because she said no to a man after
Right.
catcalling, or whatever. So it's like
Right.
really, the two things that I'll leave people is what when someone says no, it's thank you for taking care of yourself.
Mm.
And then also just reminding yourself that people have a right to say no to me. I don't have to make it mean all of these things that we make it mean.
Correct.
You know?
And I apologize to everybody. New York is always full of sirens in the background, so it's pretty normal. But there's a comment here, Tokyo. She says, or church. That was my place to learn. And then, and I was also violated in church. And this was like not by an adult, but it was like another young boy who just like,
Mhm.
so church is another one. I mean,
But we
about the
collectively, all over the
Vatican
place,
too,
people violate consent.
but especially the church too, especially with those allegations from the Catholic churches.
Yeah.
It's like it's a prevalent thing. But I want you to talk about the dynamics within marriage because once we talked about that, you were just like, yeah, spouses also need to confirm consent with one another. And I was like
Yeah.
flabbergasted.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to not keep it on my personal shit.
It's okay. We don't know.
No, I don't want to, but I will say this. I feel like, you know, especially sometimes people are nesting with someone, and I'm saying living with someone, even if it's not married, you're living with your partner, and they want sex and you don't want to have sex, right?
Mhm.
Married or not, right? It's a no. So a
Yeah.
no is a no is a no, and it's ongoing. So just because we could have had the wildest sex yesterday, okay? Today my body is a no, right? Or their
Yeah.
body is a no. And that goes gender wise because this gets
Yes.
violated on both sides. You don't have entitlement over someone else's body. They have autonomy over their own body. So a check-in, hey, and I'm not talking about like, hey, do you want to be touched here? Do you want to be touched here? Yeah, you can have the whole conversation of like, what type of touch do you like? What are you okay with today? These are curiosity questions so that, because guess what? When two people are at a hell yes, it is amazing, right? That's where the pleasure begins, right?
Yeah.
If you're at one person's at a hell yes, and the other person's like, all right, I'm gonna just go along with it. First of all, your whole body is not gonna experience the pleasure that you think, it's just so one-sided. You're not going to have orgasms. You're not going to really feel great. It's not pleasurable,
Right.
and you're violating this person's consent because you just was so thirsty that you couldn't check in a little bit and say, hey, are you really okay with this today? Oh, you're not? Okay, well, I'm going to go to my toy closet and give myself some pleasure because no one is entitled to giving me pleasure. I'm
Mm.
always wanting a hell yes. I want a hell yes from my partners.
Mm. That makes
And
sense.
and the first time I heard a consent workshop, it was like, oh wow, I've been through this on the other side, and like it was like all these gray area rapes,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
It's like a gray area. Like technically, I didn't get thrown down and sexually assaulted, but think about all the times we said yes, and you was really a hell no, or
Mm.
you was a maybe, which really that means that you're a no.
That's
And
correct.
you went along with it, and that's violating consent with yourself.
Yeah, talk about
Because
the
nobody can
consent with
read your
yourself.
brain.
Like,
Yeah, you can't read
what
your.
does that mean? How
Yeah.
can you break consent with yourself?
So here's the thing: your partner, if you're saying yes, they can't read your brain. It's ideal that they'll check in and be like, hey, are you really with this? And they can be like, hey, I'm gonna really try to be perceptive, because I don't want a halfway maybe. I want a hell yes. But guess what? If you're good at acting, if you're like, yeah, I'm into it, and damn right that you're like, I don't really want to do this, but okay. I feel obligated, then they couldn't do anything about it, right? You was a great actor. You said yes. They thought it was a real yes. And now you really just violated your own consent.
Okay.
You didn't check in with yourself. So it's really part of consent is if you're a yes, say yes. If you're a no, say no. If you're a maybe, then say no. And it's really like if I could trust your yes, if I could trust your no, wait, what is it? No, if I could trust your yes, then I can trust your no. Something like that. It's like, I need to know that you're really here. Don't be a people pleaser. If you're really a yes, then be a yes. I want to be able to trust that you're really a yes.
So how is people pleasing under the umbrella of consent?
Because people are saying yes to things that they're not really a yes to. And it's out of people pleasing energy and all that, right? Um, so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying they didn't check in with themselves. They're like moving in automatic. They're moving in trying to, and that's, I'm not a therapist. They need to figure out why they do that,
Right.
why they are saying yes to things that they don't really want to say yes to. Um, sometimes in life we do have to say yes to things, right? Like, I breastfed my baby, and there was times I really didn't want to breastfeed her. I'm like, fuck, I gotta, but she's hungry, like, fuck, okay. So there are times where you do have to do things that you don't want to do, but there are
Right.
times where no one's putting a gun to your head to do this, right? But you're feeling like this weight in your head that you've made up that you have to do this, whether, when it comes to sex or whatever it is, and that's throughout life, right? It's not just sex. It's like,
Right.
oh, I got to go pick my mother up from the airport. No, you don't. If you don't want to, don't say yes to things that you don't want to say. You can, help her get an Uber. There's a lot of other options other than you saying yes to something that you don't really want to do. So part of consent is saying yes to things that you really want to do and no to things that you don't, and like checking in with yourself, taking
Yeah.
a deep breath. Sometimes you feel it in your body. I have exercises and stuff that I do with people that has them get in touch with their yeses and their nos, because you feel
Okay.
it in your body first. You feel the yes in your body first.
That's right. That's right. Let me be in integrity. We have about 2 minutes to 8:15. Do you have a little bit of more time to stay on?
I do.
Okay.
Y'all could follow me also. At some point, I will be releasing like a coaching program about consent. I used to do these workshops at the beginning of my cuddle parties, and then I also used to host events that was erotic events. And I used to do the consent grounding before these erotic events. Speaking of a puffy event, right? Like just because there are like kinky events in the world, right? But there are consensual ones that feel really safe, like the ones I used to do, which is like I'm doing a whole consent workshop before we get engaged in any type of fun, erotic things. Um, and then there's ones that people are getting drugged. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
let's talk about that.
That was
Actually,
dark. That was dark. But
I
I'm
mean,
saying,
it's
like,
real. We'll bump that.
yeah.
So, look, I want, out of respect for consent, how much time do you have to dedicate to me or
Okay,
us?
wait. One of the questions said,
Right.
"Oh,
But
okay."
I want to
I'm
get your
gonna say I'm
consent.
gonna say 10 more minutes, because here's the thing. I think
Okay.
that I've given a lot of information in this, and I think that I want people to like think about some of the things that has been said, you know. And
Right.
then when I do release a consent workshop or something, I'll share it with you, and then y'all can sign up.
All right. So let's use our 10 minutes wisely. You were reading the comment. Go ahead.
Okay, the funny thing that you said that I've only been married a year, and I would think that if I want it, then you can't tell me no if I'm your wife. Exactly, that entitlement, right? And women, oh my God, I've been on the other side. I've been on the other side. I've been on the side of going along with it because I'm supposed to, because I'm the wife. Right? I'm supposed to. That's what they say. Well, I got married at 22. Okay, so little girl Malika was doing things that I guess I'm supposed to do this because I'm his wife. Right? Okay. And then I've also been on the other side of like, nesting with someone who completely rejected me, or who, I wanted it more than they wanted it from me. And I felt so entitled. This really was some of the pain the pain in that relationship led to the consent work, because that pain of feeling rejected, especially, at the time I was pregnant. I'm like, how dare you? I'm carrying your baby. I want sex, whatever, and I'm feeling so rejected. And then I get all like, almost like, you know, this is why humanity is very interesting, because the people are not all bad, right? When you can see yourself as like, wow, I've been abusive, like I called this person a name because I felt rejected.
Yeah.
Right? So when someone calls you a name, like, okay, bitch, because you said no, how are you no different than them, in some regard, right? So women get to sit with themselves as well and go, wait, how often have I turned into the abuser or turned into name calling or whatever it is because I got rejected, right?
Yeah,
so then you get to go into this work about coping with rejection, right? And grieving and grief work is about consent as well, because everybody has a right to say no. And so there's practicing a yes, practicing a no. Hearing a no is a part of the consent thing as well, because you get to cope with the rejection. You get to let go of your entitlement. You get to grieve what you expected and what you thought this was going to be. You get to grieve all of that and let it go. And, let go of all the things you made it mean. Like, oh my God, you're rejecting me. I live with you. I'm your wife. I have a child. Like, how are you rejecting me? Like all these things that we're internalizing the no. And just remind yourself, for me, the work that I did is people have a right to say no to me. Just like I have a right to say no to them.
And even non-verbally, because now that you're seeing this, I am seeing where I've also been abusive, where hey, I may want sex like more, and now I'm not pressuring you like, yo, it's been like this long. Like, where you at? What's going on with you? And making someone feel pressured to come have sex with me, and that's not okay.
Yeah, and like sitting with the entitlement, sitting with the all of that of like, hey, this person has a right to say no to about their body. Correct. And now you have information to go, hey, this person doesn't, I need more touch in a relationship and this doesn't work for me. Right. Now you can make those decisions, but coercing someone and hounding someone to say yes to you when they're saying no and taking care of themselves is abusive, is toxic, it's not okay. And I think as humans, we all can look at ourselves in somewhere in our life where maybe we didn't react well when someone said no to us.
Correct. I want to read this comment. I know we have limited time, Tokyo, because people have been taught that under this name of being submissive or compliant, this is what they should do in a marriage. Hunties, this is a whole lesson. Hello. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about the coercion? Because this is also related to the Diddy shit. And I've been hearing a lot of people like, well, what's the difference between P. Diddy and Hugh Hefner?
Well, here's the thing. It's the same thing about like, wrong is wrong is wrong, right? So let's not deflect, right? So the parents is wrong, great, but let's not deflect, okay? R. Kelly is wrong, so let's talk about that. Yes, you have to know all them people's wrong. with they, what is it? Weinstein, all the things. Okay, but also let's
And
not deflect. We are dealing with this particular case, and I think it's going to be wonderful. In saying it's going to be wonderful because I think all along the hip hop community and the music industry, the lyrics, all of it is just all. There was this woman on Instagram that did a series on lyrics and songs that literally promote sexual assault
yeah,
and violating people's consent. And
yeah,
it's just so like, so it's almost like, I think I recently heard like someone say if the chickens are coming home to roost,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that has nothing to, one don't have to do, tea don't have to do with milk in Spain. What do they say? What's the saying? I forget. No, one don't have nothing to do with the other. I mean, yes, there are white people doing horrible things, but let's talk about this, and the
Yeah, and I wanted
impact.
to speak to this
Yeah.
case because to me, and I wasn't in Hugh Hefner's house, but from my understanding, the allegations here with this Diddy dude is that you were using drugs and putting Mickeys in people's drinks. So that doesn't as soon as you're doing that, then your consent is taken away.
Right. A kid can't say yes. A kid can't give consent. A drunk person cannot give consent. A drugged person cannot give consent. And also there's a huge power dynamic, right? So there's like this
Hmm.
whole like, I think it was like, these people he would be like, "Oh, I could get you a record deal." And it's this power dynamic of, even if people are saying yes, like it just was a complete utter like unsafe environment because
Correct.
did they feel like, oh, I have to say yes, or my album, he's not going to put money into my album, or there's like this huge power dynamic, in which case the whole environment is non-consensual.
There you
you know
go. And we have about 3 minutes left, so I want to honor your time.
yes.
So first, let me just thank you for being here. I'm really grateful to talk about this. And what is something that you would like to? And thank you, Cheryl. She left the comments. It's a great topic. I think it's a great topic.
Yes.
We need more of it in our schools. But what would you like to leave the audience?
Yeah, I would like the audience to learn more about consent for themselves, right? There's a few videos about it on YouTube. I'm going to start creating more content about consent because we piled a lot in this 45 minutes, and
Yeah.
just breaking it down to weekly topics. Um, but just in general, like really getting the basic knowledge about consent and teaching it to your sons, teaching it to your little cousins, teaching it to your, that's why I'm gonna be honest. When men be like, "Oh, I'm having a men's circle and I'm a stand for men," I'm like, well, y'all get to teach each other about consent,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
um, and
Amen.
go over the fries model, saying yes to your, check in with yourself first and often. You know, ask yourself, am I really a yes? Take a deep breath and have a conversation with yourself. Are you okay with this? At any moment you could say no. And that goes across the board regarding not just sex, but with anything. Imagine if you did everything that you really wanted to do.
Mm,
Or
mm,
at
mm.
least that you're really clearly making a choice. That's why I say enthusiastic or engaged.
Yeah.
So you're like, you know what? It's not like I'm not enthusiastic about it, but I'm not being forced. I'm not being coerced. I clearly want to do this.
Yeah, we definitely get to understand. Thank you for leaving these tips with us. I do see the opportunity that we need to learn what nonverbal cues are. Being able to read the room is another thing, and reading your own
Yeah,
damn room as well. And one of the most important things that I do take away is honoring the gift of choice, something that is God given, right? We have the
right.
choice, and whether someone's a yes or a no, we get to honor that, right? And not make it about ourselves.
Yes.
Oh, I have one more comment, and then we're gonna end because we still have 1 minute
It's
left.
okay. It's okay. It's
Um,
okay.
oh, thank you, Nicole. Goes Just the 20 minutes I got, I loved it. Tokyo goes, I love this. I have to go, loves. Got a test on childhood trauma. I love it.
Yes.
And then Nona Carey, if you are planning a trip to the A, I would love for you to be a guest on my show and also promote everything you have coming up. Yes, Nona Carey has a show,
Yes.
Nona Carey and Friends.
I teach my daughter about consent too. Like she
Yes, and we
knew
need
about
to
that word
teach our
very
kids.
clear.
Yes, Nona Carey, I would definitely ask Malika to come on your show. I love her show. She's dope. But all right, well, we wrapped up in the time that we said we would time,
All right.
the addendum. I thank you for being here to talk about this, and I'm gonna leave this recording up for us to understand, what's going on in our worlds, and us to make these decisions. And I'm also going to post this on my YouTube channel. You can follow me, everybody, at the Inclusion Lady, and that's everywhere: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Boom. Oh, Tanya Ellis, I love you and I miss you very much.
Thank you.
I love y'all. Thank you. Y'all have a good one.
Do you stop the